The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone present to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the absence of clergy, let us bow our heads in a moment of silent reflection or prayer. Reading of the Journal.
In Senate, Monday, January 27, 2020, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Sunday, January 26, 2020 was read and approved. On motion, Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the Journal stands approved as read. Presentation of petitions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Jannars.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the resolution calendar with the exceptions of resolutions 2660, 2673, and 2685.
All in favor of adopting the resolution calendar with the exceptions of 2660, 2673, and 2685, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The resolution calendar is adopted. Senator Jannars.
And we now take up resolution 2660 by Senator Thomas. Read that resolution. Its entirety, or what are we doing with this one?
Title only.
Title only, and recognize Senator Thomas on the resolution.
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 2660 by Senator Thomas, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim January 27, 2020 as Holocaust Remembrance Day in the state of New York.
Senator Thomas on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we remember and honor the lives of 6 million Jewish people and millions of others who perished in a systematic program of genocide, a program that was also aimed at minorities, LGBTQ people, and people with disabilities. The Holocaust will forever be a warning to all people of the dangers of hatred, bigotry, racism, and prejudice. It has been 75 years since the survivors of Auschwitz were set free, and yet we are seeing an unprecedented rise in anti-Semitism, hate crimes, and Holocaust denial across our country, and even within our own communities. At a time when hatred and divisiveness are on the rise, individual rights are under attack, abuse of authority is becoming commonplace, and we are called to remember the lessons of the Holocaust. Never again is right now. We must do everything in our power to fight anti-Semitism, united together as New Yorkers. As the last living generation of Holocaust survivors shrinks in numbers, it is more important than ever that we share their stories with our children. Earlier this month, I brought my 1-year-old daughter, Layla, to the March Against Anti-Semitism on Long Island. I want my daughter to live in a just, kind, and tolerant world, and I want her to know that she has a voice, and a voice that matters. On that day, I held my daughter in front of a crowd of thousands of Long Islanders who used their voices to speak out against anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hatred. People of all faiths, creeds, backgrounds, and origins came together to reject hateful rhetoric and violence against groups of people based on their identity. Here in New York, we will continue to stand in solidarity with our Jewish communities. Together, we say an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. We observe this Holocaust Remembrance Day to remember the atrocities committed against the Jewish people. To my colleagues and to the people of New York, I say, let us never forget our commitment to speaking out and taking action against hatred, bigotry, and racism in all forms. Thank you.
Senator Carlucci on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator Thomas for putting forth this important resolution as we commemorate International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I'm truly honored and humbled to have with us in the chamber not only the director of the Holocaust Museum and Center for Education and Tolerance in Rockland County, Andrea Wingard, who's with us here today, but also we have a true American hero and someone that I've gotten to know over the years, and that's Alan Moskin. And Alan Moskin's a World War II veteran, and not only that, but he was one of the liberators in May of 1945 when he came at the age of 18 years old and helped liberate the camp of Gauchkin. And his work is just to be commemorated, and it doesn't end there. Since that time, Alan has spent his time dedicated to educating people about his experience, about that time and the atrocities that he saw personally. He has now spoken to over 100,000 middle school students across the country. So I am just so humbled and honored to be able to call him my friend. He is always there at every event in the community, and one of those people that you see and you know, hey, you never know how your example is going to impact someone. And we know that not only has he liberated and saved thousands of people personally, but he's touched thousands of lives over the years. And that's why it's so important that we commemorate this day here in the Senate chamber, and in a time where we see a rise in anti-Semitic attacks, we see a rise in hatred across this state and across this nation. Now more than ever, we have to remember and say, never again means never again. And in fact, where we have the Holocaust Museum and Tolerance Center in Rockland County, it's less than a mile down the street from where the Hanukkah attack took place in Muncie. And it's fitting that we commemorate and we recognize this day, and we're excited to see the governor put forward legislation in the executive budget to say children should visit the Holocaust Museum, that we can't just talk about this. We have to take action, we have to do it now, and make sure that we never forget and our children never forget as well. So with that, I want to thank my guests here today, and particularly one of my heroes, Alan Moskin, for the sacrifices that you've made to our country, our community, and our state. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kaplan on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we confront the cancer of anti-Semitism in our own communities and around the world, it is more important than ever that we keep the history of Holocaust alive and speak out against anti-Semitism at every opportunity. The history of Holocaust shows us the consequences of allowing anti-Semitism and hatred to flourish. And it is a stark reminder to us all the consequences if we don't speak out and take action to stop it. Today, as we observe International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we pause in remembrance of millions who were murdered in the name of anti-Semitism and hate. We vow to never again give up the fight against anti-Semitism and bigotry wherever they exist. And we vow to never let another Holocaust happen again. I thank Senator Thomas for his resolution and all my colleagues who stand with us. Thank you.
Senator Sanders on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join with Senator Thomas and others on this incredibly important remembrance, the Holocaust Remembrance Day. We have to always keep in mind that 6 million Jews, 20 million Russians, innumerable blacks, browns, and gypsies and gays were killed in this period. I name these others because we have to remember that all of us are one. And the reason why we should say never again is that we live it in our personal lives, that it will have to be a personal thing, that we will have to stand against madness wherever it puts its head forward. And we'll have to do it on a personal level. When there's nobody around and you hear foolishness that normally you may just say, okay, it's okay, you need to stop them and say, my friend, you're wrong. And that may make people uncomfortable. That may make people, you may lose a friendship. but you may educate a person under those conditions. We really have to do this on a personal level. Even as we have young people go and tour and do other kinds of things, it must be on a personal level. And some may say that this should be, it's just a Jewish thing and we shouldn't worry about that. They are so wrong. They are absolutely wrong. I am reminded, as I conclude, I am reminded what James Baldwin said to Angela Davis. He said, I'm fighting for you because if they come for you in the morning, they're coming for me at night. Never again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Stavisky on the resolution.
Thank you, Senator Thomas, for introducing this legislation. And I'd like to thank our friends from Rockland County for coming. I'm very familiar with the museum in Rockland County. Every time we pick up the newspaper and we see a story or hear on the radio or receive an email about an atrocity, and that's what happened in Jersey City, it happened in Muncie, it happened in Pittsburgh, it happens on the streets throughout the world, really. It's not confined, unfortunately, to the United States. But this is an issue that I think resonates with everybody, and I think we have to continue to teach children in our schools, as we do in New York State. It's required to teach not necessarily the lessons, but the horrible things that happened so that they can continue to teach their children what happened during the 1930s and 40s. When you pick up the newspaper and you see photographs of some of the survivors, and there have been stories recently, obviously, in the media, you take a look at the faces, and these are people who actually experienced the horrors of Auschwitz and Buchenwald and all of the other terrible places. But you also see resilience and hope for the future. And at the same time, they have expressed a fear that there's a resurgence in this kind of thinking and talking and behavior. And we've got to continue this fight day in and day out so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bailey on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Thomas, for introducing this incredibly important resolution. We spoke about Dr. King just about a week ago, and he said that hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. But I'll add something on top of the love. Love plus education is what we need. Awareness is what we need. If you understand something and you're giving the opportunity to understand who people are as opposed to what you think they are, we're all much better off. The Holocaust was a major atrocity, and I remember learning about it in school. And I remember learning about people of the Jewish faith being persecuted and being disrespected and killed for no other reason than they were being who they were. But it didn't get real to me until I got to 9th grade at the Bronx High School of Science. Inside of the Bronx High School of Science, tucked in the library where I seldom went as a 9th grader, don't follow that, but tucked in that library is a world-famous Holocaust museum. And on one of my free periods, I ambled in there, and I was amazed. I was amazed that despite what I read, what I saw was so much more demonstrative and so much more different. And just in one day, I gained so much of a greater understanding and appreciation and a respect for the individuals who managed to survive such an atrocity. And Mr. President, and anybody in the chamber within the sound of my voice, I would implore you, if you get a chance to go to the Bronx High School of Science, to look at that museum. It's in the Bronx. It's a block outside of my district, unfortunately, but it's in the boogie down. And you'll learn a lot. And I think that you'll learn something that you didn't know yesterday. And I think that's what we are as people, to make sure that we don't repeat these atrocities. Because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. That's why we have to make sure we learn our history and make sure we understand that these things can never, ever happen again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator May on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I like my colleagues, rise on this very solemn occasion to remember 6 million people who died and to condemn the hatred and the bigotry and the anti-Semitism in particular that led to the Holocaust. But we also have to remember to condemn blind obedience to leadership that preached a hateful ideology. The number of people who felt that they were just following orders or just doing what their neighbors were doing and that therefore it was okay is a lot of the reason why this happened. And if we don't focus on that, on our personal responsibility for both living a life that suits our morals, but living a life that questions what we are being told by people around us, then we're not really honoring the lesson of the Holocaust. Thank you.
Senator Mayer on the resolution.
Mr. President, thank you also to Senator Thomas for giving us the opportunity to be sure that we speak about this publicly, which is our obligation as those who are alive at this time. We can't be quiet, we can't forget, and we can't even remember quietly. We have to remember loudly. And that's why I want to thank Mr. Moskin and the others, and I've seen them in my district, survivors who have come and spoken to classes of young people for whom this is something they really don't understand. They can't imagine the story, and you provide a real example of a human being who has experienced this, and that they relate to. They relate to the story of you as a young man and the others I've seen as young men and young women in this incredibly difficult, terrible circumstance. And that is a life-changing experience. And for the next generation that does not know those stories, it is our obligation as legislators and as those who are not afraid to speak up to make sure that your story and the stories like yours are heard by the young people in our schools, from Brooklyn to Yonkers to Buffalo to the North Country. Every one of our students needs to hear the real-life story, the real-life champions, and the personal impact of the most terrible thing upon our world, not only those who perished, but our entire world, which suffered a grievous loss. And we have to recommit ourselves never again, but we will keep the stories alive, and thank you for doing that, and thank you for those like you who are committed to making sure our next generation knows and feels and understands how real this is. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Harkam on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Thomas, for bringing this important resolution forward. I agree with colleagues. There's some great remarks. I wanted to state that when the Holocaust started, it started with rhetoric, political rhetoric. And then it descended into vandalism that had taken root in the fertility of that rhetoric. And then it spread to lawlessness, where law enforcement not only turned the other cheek, it actually participated. And then we know what happened with the mass extermination program. Today in our country right now, we have a setting where we have rhetoric that is providing fertile ground. And many of us in our districts are experiencing now the next level, which is vandalism. In my district, we've had synagogues vandalized, churches vandalized, mosques vandalized. Just last week, had a church in Pleasantville, New York, vandalized for the crime of flying the pride flag outside of the church. And what we do every time this happens in our district is we say that this is not acceptable here. You know, that white power stickers are not acceptable in school bathrooms. Swastikas are not acceptable to be carved into playground equipment. And it's so critical that all of us in this body stand, and every time these things happen in our districts, we gather with like-minded people and we say, not on our watch. Not on our watch. Because we don't want this descending to the next level. We don't want people thinking that this distorted thinking, this diseased thinking, is somehow acceptable. And I know in my district and in the Hudson Valley, we are far richer because of our diversity. And that's what makes us such a wonderful place to live. But it's going to take all of us working together when hate rears its ugly head, that we need to say, no, this is not acceptable, this is not a prank, this is not okay on our watch. And so today, on this solemn day remembering the Holocaust, we need to learn those lessons and apply them today, because we are a tolerant and accepting and loving state of New York, and bigotry has really no place in the state of New York. Thank you.
Senator Gennardis on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise, thank Senator Thomas for introducing this resolution to pay my tribute on International Holocaust Remembrance Day. I think many of my colleagues have said so eloquently the thoughts that I wanted to share. It's a very scary time that we live in. You know, we've seen the rise in anti-Semitism, the rise in hate crimes manifest itself in pure violence in our own home state in New York, but across the country. A few weeks ago, there were banners being displayed in my district for neo-Nazi white supremacist groups, openly in front on the highway, and stickers on light posts. Terrifying times that we're all living in. So yes, we all have an obligation and a responsibility to condemn the rise in hate crimes, the rise in anti-Semitism, to keep uttering those powerful words, never again, never forget, making sure that we are teaching the people coming behind us just how important it is to hold on to the memory of what happened 75 years ago, and we need to keep doing that. I do want to share a story or call attention to a book I just read about the Holocaust, part of the Holocaust, called The History of the Jewish People in Greece. And I didn't know this, but Greece, more than any other European nation, I have to say this because I'm Greek American, of course, lost a higher percentage of its Jewish population than any other nation in Europe. And I didn't know that, greater than 90%. And when there was an uprising at Auschwitz, it was led by Greek Jews who took out and killed 20 SS guards at Auschwitz towards the end of the war. And there's a famous story when the Germans who had invaded the island of Zakynthos went to the mayor and said, "Give us a list of the Jews on the island." The mayor and the bishop gave him a list with two names, the mayor's name and the bishop's name, and said, "If you're going to take the Jews, you're going to take us as well." And they didn't take them. After the war, the Jewish community left to the newly formed country of Israel, and a few years later, there was an earthquake on the island of Zakynthos that devastated the entire island, and unsolicited aid packages came back to help the island recover. And those aid packages came from those who had left Zakynthos, who were saved and spared because of the actions of the mayor and the bishop at that time. So we all live in a shared world. We all have a human obligation to each other to love one another regardless of who we are or what God we pray to. And I hope that we can take that lesson of service to each other with us as we look to combat the scourge of hate that we see rising its head today. So thank you very much, and I vote aye.
Senator Sepulveda on the resolution.
Thank you for allowing me to speak in this resolution. Thank you, Senator Thomas, for this resolution. When I was a young law student 30 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. And if anyone wants to experience the impact of the Holocaust, I encourage everyone to make that part of a trip once in your life. Nothing like that visit drove home the atrocities, the brutality, and the complete inhumane behavior towards the Jewish people. And so for those of us that need to be reminded always to speak up against injustice, always take a position against anything that may lead to this, always fight against individuals that are leaders that use this kind of rhetoric, this rhetoric of hate to maintain power. I encourage you all to go visit these locations, and you'll see firsthand the impact. And if that doesn't change your perspective, if that doesn't change the way you feel about these kinds of issues, then nothing will. And I want to thank Mr. Moskin for being here today. The work that you do ensures that something like this never happens again. Thank you.
Senator Hoylman on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to thank Senator Thomas for introducing this resolution and the guests, Mr. Moskin. It's an honor to have you here, and my colleagues for supporting this resolution. I think one of the issues we have to be concerned about, most top of mind, given the spread of hatred, the rise in anti-Semitic attacks, is social media. And I think we as policymakers need to look at social media as the instrument that anti-Semites and other hate groups are now using, in part because of the algorithms, Mr. President, that social media portals use to spread hatred and, of course, gain followers and advertisers. But in addition to that, I wanted to note that my husband recently came across a letter that his family had found. His great-grandmother was in Poland in March 1941 with her husband in the Białystok region. She sent a note to the family on the 26th of March to the American family. And the note said, "My dear child, we received your postcard and your letter with the card." And I replied immediately, "I assume you've already received it. How are you, my beloved? You probably corresponded with Sonia, their daughter. How are they doing? How is she doing? Why don't you send regards to Rachel and to Chachi as well? Why is it that none of them is writing anything to me? Thank God we are in good health and doing well. We don't lack anything, and we hope that things will not get worse." That was the last letter they ever received from their great-grandmother, and she was sent to the camps with her husband shortly thereafter when the Nazis liquidated that region. So it was so profound to our family, not knowing the details of his great-grandmother's demise, but learning that we have this incredibly profound and sad connection to what so many people across this world share, but we need to amplify that so that it never happens again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Tedisco on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an important resolution today, and I thank the sponsor and all the sponsors and my colleagues for standing up and speaking out. When we talk about discrimination, bigotry, anti-Semitism, prejudice, racism, it's at the very center of evil. But I don't think there's one word that we should be using. Individuals who perpetrated those crimes, which were initiated and followed through in the lives that were taken, with the Holocaust and what we've seen in New York City, and what we see in communities here in New York, across this nation, and around the world, are not mistakes. Don't give people the benefit of the doubt and say we can't make those mistakes again. Those were planned. These are evil people. These are people that don't accept diversity or differences in others. They're extremists. Not only the ones that took the action to take other people's lives, but those who turned their backs and said, well, it's not me. That's cowardness. That was planned. Those are not mistakes when people do those types of things. We can't give people the benefit of the doubt. There's no place in our world, here, in this nation, around the world, for people who you say have made mistakes, or we give them the benefit of the doubt that they've made mistakes. We have to stand up, and I agree with everyone who have stood up and said, we have to call them out, we have to get in their face, wherever we see it, whenever we see it, in any part of the world. And we're absolutely right to stand up and speak out today. And they're not mistakes. That is the very center of evil that was initiated there and now for individuals. And we have to try to eliminate it in every way we can. And the best way to eliminate the evil is with, as some have said, with love. But we can't give them the benefit of the doubt saying that Well, those are mistakes. No, these people feel that way. They have that inside of them. They don't respect anybody else's differences, cultural, religious, anything else. I think we do in this body, and we illustrate that today, and that's why I'm proud to be here today and to stand up and speak out and say, we're not going to allow that to happen. We're not going to turn our backs. We're not going to let people be part of that anywhere where it happens. And I'm happy to stand up and speak out and support this resolution today, Mr. Speaker. President. I'm used to being in the Assembly.
Senator Biaggi on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Thomas, for introducing this resolution and for inspiring us all to reflect on what this actually means for the people of the state of New York. This year, we have seen a countless number of anti-Semitic actions and attacks on innocent New Yorkers. And when I think about how it has affected my district, in a middle school in Pelham, there was a swastika that was found on a door. And it brought me incredible sadness, not only because I had gone to that middle school or had learned in those classrooms, but because I actually truly believed that it was a community that did not have hate. But what I learned was that hate is pervasive. And so when I reflected on what that meant, I was brought back to something that I had learned when I was in college from the philosopher Hannah Arendt, who in 1961 reported on the war crimes of Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was a Nazi operative who was responsible for organizing and transporting millions and millions of people and Jewish people to concentration camps. What she had found on his trial was that Eichmann was terrifyingly normal, as she put it, that he had evil deeds, but that they didn't have actually evil intentions attached to it, that it was instead his evil deeds were connected to his thoughtlessness, a disengagement from the reality of his evil acts, that he, quote, never realized what he was doing due to an inability to think from the standpoint of somebody else. I often reflect on a quote, which is, "The wound is the place where the light enters." Let this resolution and this time together reflecting on the Holocaust be one that does not inspire us to continue to provoke hate, and let us be loving and thoughtful and empathetic so that none of the acts that we make will harm or cause any more suffering to another human being. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Mr. Moskin, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you all the courtesies and privileges of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Janaris.
Mr. President, can you please recognize Senator Montgomery for an introduction?
Senator Montgomery for an introduction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members. I am very, very proud to be able to introduce to you and to acknowledge for others young people who have come to Albany to support legislation that we will be voting for shortly, and that is members of the Youth Build organization in the state of New York. The bill that we are going to be voting for today will establish for the first time in our state a vital piece of legislation which codifies Youth Build in law, and as such will provide a commitment to delivering a long-standing financial assistance to programs with such a very strong and demonstrated benefit to young people in our state. Up to this legislation, Youth Build has been existing primarily on federal funding and very, very little funding from our state. Today, we change that. We begin to change that. And I want to recognize that there are 16 of us, only 16 of us, shamefully, who now represent youth bill programs. And I would like to name my colleagues: Senator Myrie, Senator Sepulveda, Senator Benjamin, Senator Serrano, Senator Jackson, Senator Stavisky, Senator Boyle, Senator Savino, Senator Amador, Senator Serino, Senator Kennedy, Senator Roebuck, Senator Tedisco, Senator Breslin, Senator Griffo, and the Majority Leader, Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins. Those are the members of this body who currently represent young people who have benefited from youth build organizations throughout our state. Now, you will note that my name is not listed, and that is because I don't actually represent, but I have stolen Senator Myrie's youth bill program, which is the Dreams Youth Bill. And if I may, Mr. President, I would like for them to stand so that we can all see them and recognize them. I believe Senator Myrie might want to speak on his own group, but I'll just recognize that Ms. Con Evans, who is the director. This is, where is she? She's up there. Peter Rodriguez, the associate director. Dayton Freeman, who is the project construction manager. Teresa Patterson, AmeriCorps coordinator. Marcia Tasher, case manager. Dwayne Burgess, employment specialist. Keith Allah, teacher's aide. Kallian Lee Rivieras, construction trainer. Camille Grell, Department of Education instructor. Augustine Osondu, also DOE instructor, and Carol Noel. And these are the staff of Dreams. Those are the people who will send these young people out to a successful life beyond because of their participation in Youth Bill. So I thank them because the young people that we celebrate today are here because of them. And I would like to offer my colleagues, some of them already represent Youth Bill organizations. They will speak for themselves. But I thank you, Mr. President.
So to clarify, this was an introduction. So when the bill comes to the floor, all members will be allowed to speak at that time. But this was an introduction from Senator Montgomery. So we're going to move on, and then we'll allow for the commentary from our members when the bill comes to the floor. Thank you. Oh, Senator Janaris.
At this time, can we take up a previously adopted resolution 2341 by Senator Biaggi? Read that resolution in its entirety and recognize Senator Biaggi.
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 2341 by Senator Biaggi, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim January 2020 as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month in the state of New York. Whereas it is the custom of this legislative body to recognize official months that are set aside to increase awareness of serious issues that affect the lives of the citizens of New York State. And whereas, attendant to such concern and in full accord with its long-standing traditions, this legislative body is justly proud to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim January 2020 as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month in the state of New York, in conjunction with the observance of National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And whereas in 2007, an interagency task force was created, which was dedicated to evaluating the current circumstances of the existence of human trafficking in the state of New York, with a lasting resolve to bolster existing response infrastructures while creating strategies to aid victims and increase public awareness of the issue. including and beyond the recognition of Slavery and Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And whereas, beginning in 2010, by presidential proclamation, each January has been designated as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And whereas, following the start of National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, with the help of non-government organizations, National Human Trafficking Day began and is observed annually on January 11th. And whereas the state of New York was, in 2018, the state fourth most plagued by the scourge of sexual and labor trafficking of individuals of all ages, as recognized by the Polaris Project, a leading non-government, non-profit voice in the global march towards the eradication of human trafficking, which equates with modern slavery. And whereas the number of sexual and labor trafficking cases reported each year continues to grow, as more light is given to the issue by various actors in New York, across the United States, and around the globe. And whereas in 2018, 492 cases of human trafficking were reported to the Human Trafficking Hotline in the state of New York, which is more than 4% of the 10,949 cases reported across the United States. And whereas the scope and magnitude of the slavery and human trafficking is yet to be known, both domestically and abroad. And whereas Human Trafficking Awareness Month was implemented to raise awareness among Americans that human trafficking does not just happen in other countries, but in states and communities across the United States. And whereas it is imperative that there be greater public awareness of this serious issue, and more must be done to eradicate slavery and human trafficking at the local, state, and national levels. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pause in its deliberations to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim January 2020 as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month in the state of New York, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution, suitably engrossed, be transmitted to the Honorable Andrew M. Cuomo, Governor of the state of New York.
Senator Biaggi on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I did in 2019, it is a privilege in 2020 to introduce this resolution on the Senate floor, recognizing January as Human Trafficking Prevention Month in New York State. I stand in solidarity with the survivors and the allies that are fighting to end the injustice of child and adult exploitation. Human trafficking is defined as the practice of illegally transporting people from one country or area to another, typically for the purposes of forced labor or sexual exploitation. Human trafficking is an illegal $150 billion industry that touches nearly every part of the world. In 2018, the United States was ranked one of the world's worst places for human trafficking. Due to the hidden nature of the crime, there is no official number of human trafficking victims in the United States, but estimates place it in the hundreds of thousands. According to Restore NYC, a non-for-profit organization that works to support survivors of human trafficking transitioning back into everyday life, New York City is a gateway and one of the largest destinations for trafficked women in the country. In fact, this is an issue that touches my district and exists right in the heart of the Bronx. I am honored to introduce and acknowledge in the chamber today Monique Ferguson Riley. Monique is a survivor of human trafficking. She is a wife and a mother to 5 children. She is a leader in her community, the Bronx, and all 5 boroughs. She is a fighter. Monique is the founder of Freedom Youth LLC and Family Justice Center, a grassroots organization of survivors with the mission to educate and to prevent human trafficking among teens and young adults in high-risk communities by providing mentorship, preventative awareness, training, and support to those seeking refuge. Monique embodies courage and resilience. Monique is transforming her trauma into action to defend survivors and at-risk communities from the vicious cycle of human trafficking and to empower the next generation of Bronxites to be agents for change. It has been an honor to work with her and to learn from her, as well as members of Freedom Youth and their partners in the Bronx Human Trafficking and Domestic Violence Task Force to identify solutions to address this issue. Mr. President, I ask that the Senate extend all the privileges of the House to Monique.
To Monique Ferguson, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We applaud you. We extend to you all of the courtesies and privileges of this House. Please rise and be recognized. The resolution was previously adopted on January 14th. Senator Janaris.
At this time, can we take up Resolution 2685 by Senator Jacobs, read its title only, and recognize Senator Jacobs?
The Secretary will read.
Senate Resolution 2685 by Senator Jacobs, mourning the tragic and untimely death of 11-year-old Luca S. Kalani of Hamburg, New York.
Senator Jacobs on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to offer this resolution. Unfortunately, it's a sad one, and I have the honor of representing the town of Hamburg, New York, and a family in my district just suffered the tragic loss of their son, Luca Solani, and 11-year-old who died tragically as a result of the flu, and parents' worst nightmare. And I am offering a resolution here for their family. Luca, the name means giver of light, which is very appropriate for this young man. He was the light of his parents, Roger and Ashley. He was the adoring little brother of his older sister, Isabella, and doting, protective older brother of his sisters, Talia and Frankie. It is difficult to imagine the grief they feel today, and the prayers and sympathies of our entire community go out to the members of this loving family. Mr. President, this resolution does more than just mourn Luca's passing, but also celebrates the life of this very special young man who impacted in a beneficial way of anybody that had the pleasure of knowing him. And at this point, I would like to ask you to recognize Senator Borriello, who knew the family personally and wanted to speak more at length about this. But thank you. And as we talk about that the community in my district supports and grieves with this family and prays for this family, this resolution today is sending a message that the New York State family is also grieving and sympathizing and mourning with them and praying for them as they move through this journey of grief. Thank you very much.
Senator Borriello on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Jacobs for sponsoring this. I think any parent's worst nightmare is the thought of losing their child. And for my friends Ashley and Roger Kalani, that nightmare became a reality on January 11th when their son Luca died from complications from the flu. This is a tragic loss. I have known the Kalani family my whole life. They are from Fredonia, my hometown. I am friends with Ashley and Roger, and in fact, I saw them and Luca just a few days before Christmas at a party. And to know just a short time after he was gone was just devastating for us all. And for as tragic as this is, the people in Western New York have done what they have always done. They surrounded this family and supported them. The communities around Western New York lit up the skies in orange, which was Luca's favorite color. Buildings, restaurants, people's homes were lit up with orange lights to celebrate his life. Also, they have started a foundation. Even though their grief is still fresh, they have started a foundation in Luca's name. This is because not long ago, Luca and his father attended the Buffalo Bills game in Pittsburgh. And as they were driving home, they stopped at a gas station. And Luca said to his father, "Please buy a lottery ticket. And if we win the lottery, I would like to start a foundation to help children who can't afford to go to events like this to be able to go and experience the things I've experienced in my life." This was a very, very wise young man. So he asked his father to do this to support other children so they could have great experiences in their life like he was so fortunate to experience. So who knew that only a few weeks later he would be gone, and that they would have this opportunity now to have him live on. And they have started the Luca S. Kalani Foundation, the purpose of which will be to help children who cannot afford to attend events and to do things that they otherwise in their life would not be able to do were it not for the support of others. Luca was an amazing young boy, an athlete. He was a loving brother to his sisters, and he truly cared for other children. I saw that myself many times. So to know that he did this and asked for this almost prophetically before passing on gives me hope that his life will live on for many, many years to come with this foundation. So I would ask everyone to please learn more about it and to please support it and to honor this family who's had such a tragic loss. And may this tragic loss turn into something that will help children throughout the area for many years to come. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Burrell. The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Senator Serrano.
Thank you. Please take up Resolution 2673 by Senator Thomas. Read the resolution title only and recognize Senator Thomas on the resolution.
The Secretary will read title only and recognize Senator Thomas on the resolution.
Senate Resolution 2673 by Senator Thomas, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim January 28, 2020 as Data Privacy Day in the state of New York.
Senator Thomas on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. In our technology-driven world, it is more important than ever to be educated on the safe practices of data privacy. We conduct a lot of our lives online, yet few of us actually understand how our information is being used, collected, and shared. Data Privacy Day is an international event that occurs on January 28th of each year. This day commemorates the signing of Convention 108, the first legally binding international treaty dealing with privacy and data protection. That was back in 1981. Today, data privacy remains a critical issue in this state and our country, especially with the growth of technology and the rise in data breaches and data theft. Data Privacy Day is all about empowering individuals and educating businesses to respect privacy, safeguard data, and enable trust. Our personal data can be used in both beneficial and harmful ways. Poor data management can be devastating for businesses and consumers. In order to understand the true value of data, consumers and businesses need to understand how it is collected, used, and shared. As more of our lives and businesses relies on the digital world, it is more important than ever that we educate ourselves on the safe practices of data privacy and safety. Thank you.
The question is on the resolution. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The resolution is adopted. Senator Serrano.
Thank you, Madam President. At the request of the sponsors, the 4 resolutions that we just took up are open for co-sponsorship.
The resolutions are open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor of a resolution, please notify the desk.
Thank
Senator
you.
Serrano.
Thank you. Can we now take up the reading of the calendar?
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 14, Senate Print 6935 by Senator Benjamin, an act to amend the civil service law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act will take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 14, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Akshar, Jacobs, Jordan, Redenhofer, and Seward. Ayes 57, nays 5.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 21, Senate Print 6942 by Senator Montgomery, an act to amend the civil service law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 21, voted in the negative, Senators Amador and Akshar. Ayes 60, nays 2.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 36, Senate Print 6957 by Senator Kaminsky, an act to amend the alcoholic beverage control law.
Read the last section.
Section 7, this act will take effect on the same date and in the same manner as the chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 36, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Borrello, Boyle, Funky, Helming, Jacobs, Jordan, Ort, Ranzenhofer, and Roback. Ayes 53, nays 9.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 51, Senate Print 7088 by Senator Addabbo, an act to amend Chapter 473 of the laws of 2010.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 63, Senate Print 6725A by Senator Carlucci, an act to amend the penal law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Carlucci to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank my colleagues for supporting this important legislation. Last year, when we saw the collapse of My Payroll HR, it left thousands of people here in New York State and around the country really helpless because they were expecting a paycheck and never got it. I had personal cases in my office where we heard the horror stories of people trying to make their cash flow expenses, paying college tuition, you name it. What this exposed was a major loophole in New York state law, where payroll companies could get away without doing their sole job of making sure that someone's pay arrived in a timely manner. We need to hold these companies accountable and make sure that hardworking New Yorkers get the paycheck that they deserve and they're entitled to. This legislation will hold these companies accountable, close that loophole, and bring our laws into the 21st century to protect workers here in New York. I'm hopeful that this legislation will serve as a model for other states to follow so that workers are protected. Madam President, I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Senator Carlucci to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 63, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Akshar and Senator Montgomery. Ayes 60, nays 2.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 73, Senate Print 6728 by Senator Breslin, an act in relation to requiring the Department of Financial Services, in consultation with the Department of Taxation and Finance, to conduct a study regarding insurance.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 73, voted in the negative, Senator Akshar. Ayes 61, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 92, Senate Print 7168 by Senator Parker, an act to amend the executive law.
Read the last section.
Section 7, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as a chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Parker to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank my colleagues very much for voting for this really important legislation. More than ever, we're finding couples are living together in the same households outside of marriage, sharing joys, happiness, but most importantly, responsibilities. The average couple actually in the state of New York will live together for 5 years before they get married. And again, these couples in long-term loving relationships should have the same kinds of protections as everyone else. This important legislation will ensure that in the context of crimes that may in fact create trauma or separate these families, that these violent losses of a loved one are recognized in the same way that we do with married couples. And so again, I want to thank my colleagues for voting for this, and I vote aye.
Senator Parker to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 101, Senate Print 7177 by Senator Martinez, an act to amend the environmental conservation law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as a chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 115, Senate Print 7191 by Senator Harkin, an act to amend the lien law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect on the same date and in the same manner as a chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 150, Senate Print 6727B by Senator Thomas, an act to amend the general obligations law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Thomas to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. Those of us who are lucky to have a job look forward to a paycheck every week or bi-weekly. And when that check doesn't come, it's sad for the employee who has to pay rent every single month or has to put food on the table for their family. So when I heard about what took place last year with the payroll company here in New York, I had to do something. As the chair of Consumer Protection, it's a happy day for me because several of my colleagues had also sponsored bills to make sure this doesn't happen again. So what my legislation does is it provides a private right of action for employees to sue the payroll company that has harmed them. And this is a step forward, especially in an industry that decided to self-regulate and put profit over people. I vote in the affirmative.
Senator Thomas to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Akshar to explain his vote.
Madam President, thank you so much. Just very quickly, I make 2 points. I think that we could all agree that this issue is significant. It's one that needs to be addressed. But if I may, and this particular issue is requiring us to have this discussion, I think one of the underlying issues in this problem was, or in this scandal, was third-party ACH providers. So we have to ask ourselves, what was the role of a third-party ACH provider in this? And it was significant, right? $26 million Cachet took. I'm concerned with this particular bill because I think that the definition is too narrowly defined, whereas those third-party ACH providers would not be captured in the current language. And after all, they were the group that was responsible for illegally clawing back millions and millions of dollars from employers. The second point, very quickly, is that it's my understanding that the Department of Financial Services is currently conducting a study and/or an investigation into the matter. And my thought, Madam President, would be to allow the department to do that work, then for us to take up whatever suggestions they have. Madam President, I'll be voting no.
Senator Akshar to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 150, voted in the negative, Senator Akshar. Ayes 61, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 169, Senate Print 6726A by Senator Ramos, an act to amend the labor law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Ramos to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. And I apologize because I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. But I rise because this was a real hardship for so many workers across the state. And it's just so important for us to make sure that employees are never penalized for the mistakes, even clerical errors, especially clerical errors, on behalf of employers or the payroll companies that they may hire. And so, to me, this bill was really about figuring out how we can improve the trust that employees should feel in their employers and in the process of getting paid. And I'm very thankful to all of my colleagues who vote for this bill, but most especially Senators Carlucci, Thomas, and Breslin, who really help us together tackle this big problem and make sure that hopefully it never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ramos, to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 200, Senate Print 7308 by Senator Sanders, an act to amend the labor law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this act will take effect on the same date and in the same manner as a chapter of the laws of 2019.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar number 200, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Amador, Brooks, Flanagan, Funky, Gallivan, Helming, Lanza, Laval, Martinez, Ort, Ranzenhofer, Robach, Seward, and Tedisco. Also Senator Akshar. Also Senator Griffo. Ayes 46, nays 16.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 231, Senate Print 21 by Senator Parker, an act to amend the Public Service Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Announce the results.
Ayes 62.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 237, Senate Print 839A by Senator Montgomery, an act to amend the Labor Law.
Read the last section.
Section 4, this act shall take effect 1 year after it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Flanagan, Janoris, Kruger, Stewart, Cousins, Thomas.
Senator Meyer.
One of my first experiences in the state Senate was having Senator Montgomery walk into my office to offer a clarification. And that clarification was that there was a program that was technically in my district, which she in fact owned. And that was the Youth Build program. And so I rise today not only to support us establishing a statewide Youth Build program, but also to salute Senator Montgomery for her years of advocacy and theft of this program that has been so successful in my district. In all seriousness, we have many conversations in this legislative body about the problems facing our communities, about the ills of our society, but rarely do we have a robust conversation about how we can prevent those problems and prevent those ills in our society. Youth Build is the perfect example of where this state should be investing, and I look forward to hopefully carrying on the legacy of fighting for Youth Build in my district and throughout the state. So Senator Montgomery, I want to thank you for championing this issue. Thank you for fighting for this for so many years, and I'll be voting in the affirmative. Thank you.
Senator Myrie to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Metzger to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to also thank Senator Montgomery for this bill, and I'm so proud to co-sponsor it. This is really one of my favorite programs that we have in New York State. It is just perfect. It serves multiple needs simultaneously. It gives our youth incredible skills and experience that they need to succeed in underserved communities, and they work on projects and needs for their underserved communities while they're gaining those skills. There's really, it's a perfect marriage. And the Ulster Youth Build was up earlier today. It's just up the road for me outside of my district, but several of the young people in the program are in my community. I'm thrilled that it's going to expand, from what I understand, to Ellenville in my district this year, and I want to see it in every underserved community in New York State. It's superb, and I thank you for this, Senator Montgomery, and I'm very proud to vote aye. Thank you.
Senator Metzger to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Bailey to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Metzger and Senator Myrie said a lot of what I was going to say, but I think that this should be the Velmonette-Montgomery Act, simply stated because, again, since I walked into the Senate, this is something that she impressed the importance upon it. And it's not about, like, things being in your district or not being in your district. District lines are rather arbitrary. If somebody's across the street and they're not in your district, are you not going to help them if they need help? Senator Montgomery has been the embodiment of somebody who decides that she wants to make sure that everybody is okay. And via the Youth Build Act that she's been championing for the short time that I've been here, but as long as she's been here, this speaks volumes about you, Senator Montgomery, and it speaks volumes about the organization and the program. To give children an opportunity to better themselves by bettering others, it teaches everybody that if you want to be a part of the solution, you got to really be a part of it. Otherwise, can't complain. Got to show up. Got to have conversations. And these programs that put skills in people's hands and let them be better parts of their communities, will be better served. So the only friendly amendment I'll ever make about Velma Montgomery's bill would be, this should be the Velma Montgomery Youth Build Act. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Bailey to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Amador to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a great bill. I want to thank Senator Montgomery for your leadership here at the New York State Youth Build Act. I believe that this is an initiative that I hope to see not just the Senate majority as well as the Assembly majority put in their one-house budgets and truly make a valiant effort in negotiating with the second floor, because the $900,000, I believe, that gets appropriated to this program is not enough. This program needs to be in every single county in the state of New York. And here's why. As many of my colleagues mentioned, it's a great program. It allows the youth, it allows someone who's 16, 17, 18, up to 26 years old, who may not have gone to school or graduated high school or to college, gives them a second chance in training, in education, in workforce development, teaching them how to work with their hands, their mind, and their back muscle all together so that they can then get on the pathway of success. This is a great program. We need to invest more into it. And I want to recognize two people who have carried the battalion of success in Montgomery, or in Schenectady County, with is Executive Director Jennifer Lawrence, who is here with us, as well as in Ulster County and Youth Bill in Kingston, the Executive Director, Bonnie Landy. And without their leadership and hard work and vision, these two programs would not be as successful, and homes wouldn't be built as good as they are without their efforts. So thank you. And Madam President, I vote aye.
Senator Amador to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Savino to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to echo the comments of Senator Bailey. We should name this the Senator Velma Montgomery Youth Build Program. She has been a champion for this since the day I met her. And I will say, I'm blessed. I have 2 youth builds in Staten Island in my district. One of them draws students from all over, young people from all over. A lot of Senator Lanz's constituents come to Youth Build. And it's not just about retraining people or giving them a skill set and allowing them to find a way to have a career path. You have to remember who comes to Youth Build and how they get there. These are young people who have been through every program under the sun. They've been in special ed, they've been in foster care, they've been tossed out, some of them are homeless. They feel that they have no place left to go, and then there are no more programs available for them because they're 18. As if suddenly they can live on their own. So kids who come to Youth Build do it because they've had a moment of self-reflection, and they want to be something better. They don't want to be defined by the worst circumstances in their life. And they walk in the door, and they go through a training, a mental toughness period. They have to earn their way into Youth Build. And not everybody who signs up makes it. But those kids who make it, you can see the transformation in 6 to 8 months of their lives. Not only do they develop skills that they can translate into a career path, they've developed confidence in themselves. They know they're going to make it no matter what happens because they've done it. That's why this is the greatest program, I believe, that this state has. We need to do more. Senator Amador is absolutely right. $900,000 is insufficient. We need to triple that. And I will say this, every one of you should want a Youth Build in your district. It is the single most successful program I have ever seen, and it really transforms kids' lives. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Savino to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Montgomery.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for your recognition and your support, but it's been really wonderful to see that if you harass people enough, long enough, they start to listen. And I really think that this is a great moment for us in this chamber. And the most wonderful thing is that it really is both sides of the aisle. We're all doing this together. In fact, I think it's some of the most avid supporters have been from my Republican colleagues for many years as well. So this really is not just one side or the other. This is all of us. And the thing that I want my colleagues to know that you would appreciate about the way that this bill is structured is that the youth bill is a model for us to use with standards that we can be assured that where we invest money in this particular program, you're going to be assured that we will get excellent results. It's already been proven based on the number of young people who have already gone through the program that we've seen today, and we've seen year after year that I've met young people who come back and say now they are successful in different phases, even some small businesses because they were launched based on this program being available to them. So the outcome is going to be positive. The investment is going to be worth it. The standards in the legislation are very clear, very specific. And yes, this will allow us to really do an investment in what I consider to be workforce development that we can all be very proud of, that we have done something wonderful for the young people in our state. So, Madam President, I vote aye. Thank you.
Senator Montgomery to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Boyle to explain his vote.
Madam President, to explain my vote very quickly, I'd like to add my voice to those giving praise to Senator Montgomery for her leadership and advocacy for Youth Build for these many years. I want to give a shout out to the Long Island Youth Build in Deer Park. Very proud to recognize them and the work they do. And for those of you who don't have Youth Build in your district, I ask you to do one thing. Go to a graduation ceremony. It's like a mini Super Bowl. It's so exciting. You see young people who may have had some troubles in the past moving forward and going on to great careers. I'm excited to put this program statewide. I vote in the affirmative.
Senator Boyle to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Aye, 62.
The bill is passed. Senator Montgomery. Senator Serrano, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Thank you. Is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the desk.
There will be an immediate meeting of the Ethics Committee in LOB 904.
There will be an immediate meeting of the Ethics Committee in LOB room 904.
And I move that we adjourn until Wednesday, January 29th at 11 a.m.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Wednesday, January 29th at 11 a.m.
Thank you.